And we are live. My name's JP Berg, and this is Dumb the Wiser, the show where we analyze the perpetual psyop that our once prosperous nation has been reduced to. So we're going to be solo today and taking questions from the chat. So hopefully we get some good questions, because generally the questions kind of dictate the quality of the show, essentially. But we're going to be touching on some of the trade war issues and some of what I interpret as misdirection psyops from the Canadian media, from the Canadian shill accounts as well. So yes, Doug Ford does a press conference confirming that Carney and his chief of staff did actually, in fact, see. He didn't necessarily indicate that they approved, but they were very well aware of his endeavor to run this ad in America regarding Ronald Reagan. And already the Canadian ambassadors released a statement saying that there will be no deal by Thanksgiving. Now that's American Thanksgiving, obviously, and that Canada specifically has burned those bridges. So it's just lovely. To me, it indicates that this is a very concise play on Canada's behalf. And again, I feel we're close to an election, and I feel that they want to play the exact same agenda, like Trump boogeyman, focus on the trade war, as opposed to the domestic failures and policy failures of the Carney regime. And again, everyone knows how I feel regarding Mr. Poilievre. I believe he is entirely controlled opposition. I think his silence speaks to that more convincingly than any other evidence. And there's a preponderance of circumstantial evidence. Now, it is circumstantial, though. I mean, there's no evidence for things like that. You look at Boris Johnson's administration, for instance, in the UK post-Brexit. Everybody knows that Johnson was a globalist. He was implementing the same agenda that Keir Starmer continued with. But even with Boris Johnson to this day, there's still no evidence. There's no tangible evidence. So all the Pierre cheerleaders that are like, where's your evidence? It's like, look, man, it's very easy to discern using logic, using discernment. We're at that point now where it's like almost Orwellian, right? Like people just refuse to believe the evidence of their eyes and ears. They instead favor some kind of evidentiary value, which is just, again, it's not going to happen. So I've been immensely deboosted like everyone else on X. Elon has even acknowledged now, like there is a bug or something. Evidently the fix is rolling out tomorrow. So I hope this was worth doing tonight. I was feeling a little under the weather. I'm coming down with something seasonal. And I canceled the show. I usually do it at 1 p.m. Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays. But today I was waiting to start, and I didn't feel it at all, so I canceled it. And I made a post referencing I'll be canceling it, and there was a lot of people that came out and were very encouraging. So I had a little nap, and I woke up and I decided, yes, I will indeed go live, and we'll have some discussion. So we have about 40 people watching live presently. If everyone could share the stream, it would very much be appreciated. But I believe what they're endeavoring to do now is shift the focus. Everything is just misdirection, right? It's like we're inundated with these total narratives, right? That's all the mainstream media in Canada. It's all state subsidized. If it's not directly state sponsored, like the CBC. So, I mean, there's no such thing as news. Like they should just call it the shit they want you to believe. And that was always true of news. But I mean, presently, it's never been this bad. So a lot of people are starting to realize the blatant, disingenuous nature of the corporate press swill merchants, and they're coming on to social media. They're very apprehensively coming on because they're starting to finally question the official narrative, the masses, the normies, we will say. And they're essentially coming on to social media, and they're getting captured just by the next psyop, right? It's all these fake CPC cheerleaders. There's not a modicum of impartiality that's put forward. It's just pushing a narrative. It's like I say, you're getting the exact same carefully constructed and cultivated narratives that you get from the corporate press. This is just the ideological antithesis. You're getting the conservative fake news on X as opposed to the liberal fake news, and it just perpetuates the dialectic. Been calling out, like, I noticed for me myself personally, I was one of those Canadians. I was very naive to a lot of the workings of everything, and I had lost trust in institutions. I lost trust in the government, and I definitely lost trust in the media narratives. So about 2 years, I came on to X myself, and I very much I definitely lean to the conservative realm of things. So just by my very nature, I got on here and I'm seeing all this liberal rage bait that's just enticing me to comment. And I was commenting with what I thought was rational responses. And I mean, you get sucked into the adversarial nature of it. So essentially, I became a culture war grifter. And I did this, man. Like, I did this for a solid year. I was coming on here, I was arguing with bigger liberal accounts, and I was perpetuating the division. And that's truly how I see it now. I feel we're genetically predisposed to certain temperaments. We're temperamentally predisposed to certain ideological leanings. Those high in creativity and openness lean to the left. Those high in conscientiousness and orderliness lean to the right. So I feel the true powers that be, the banking class and above the banking class, I feel they've found out how to efficaciously hack humanity by perpetuating this dialectical trap. It's seemingly evident to me. I'm actually in the process of writing an article regarding it. I've been talking about it on my last few podcasts, but I can't really flesh it out entirely. It's relatively complex, but essentially those people that are high in these two personality dimensions that make them lean hard to the left or to the right, they're the polarized perimeters of this. And the vast majority of the electorate in Western nations are in the middle of that. We're very much more moderate. So like, but who's represented when you think of the left? Like, who's the left? It conjures up images of like Antifa or blue-haired college students or transgender trans Tifa types. And I mean, in a lot of times it's just people that have those ideological leanings in a more moderate regard. I think the extreme ends are represented. They become the focus, and that is what perpetuates the dialectic. While we're kept looking at each other, while we're kept fighting with each other, we're essentially directly participating in our own subjugation. We're helping them create and fuel and foment the division while the technocratic government is constructed around us. The only focus relevant for me in Canada politically presently are these bills that this Carney regime is desperately endeavoring to pass. We still have Bill C2 evidently was tabled. I didn't look into the details of that. Will it be reintroduced? It was actually put on the back burner, but they have C8 and C9. C8 by Melanie Joly, who is, it essentially gives her the right to, at her own behest, cut off your internet access or your cell service. And when they do this, as a caveat to the bill, you can't inform people that you were kicked off the internet. So there's like a secrecy component to it too. It's utterly ludicrous. There's no process. There's no legislative process, like an oversight process. Like, she, at her own behest, can determine that you're a threat and she can take you off the internet. Now, Bill C9 is it's a little more ambiguous. It's relative to the subjective nature of hate. And giving, as opposed to the attorney general having to determine what a hate crime is, reaching a certain criteria, they now want to give that to police officers. So essentially, this would play out identically to how we've seen it play out in the UK with their Online Harms Act. Any deviation from the rigid and radical orthodoxy will be construed as misdis or malinformation. Any criticism, even relatively logical criticisms of their mass migration policies, will then be construed as hate speech, and dissent will not be tolerated. They've jailed tens of thousands of people in the UK. Keir Starmer's government. And I mean, Carney's a carbon cutout. Like these people, like this is what you don't understand. These are plutocrats. These are actors. And what's happened is a massive public-private partnership over the last several decades. This is like fascism. And I mean, what they're doing essentially is they're acting at the behest of oligarchs that have rigged the game, and they're implementing an agenda against the will of their constituents, and they're doing this secretively too. So it's rather sensational, and I understand how sensational it sounds, but the best indicator of this right now, and I say this frequently, there's a lot of repetition in this shows. It's like I tell people I have something I'm trying to show you that I see, and you could disagree with it, but that's what it is. It's just there's a performative nature to everything. You look at Canada, just how the last couple of years played out. Finally, Canadians, like during the trucker convoy, they got tired of the government overreach. They finally became suspect of institutional power, despite the immeasurable amount of controversies and scandals of the Trudeau years. I think for the most part, most people still believed it was above board until this point. So I think with that and the emergence of the PPC as a legitimate populist option, with Canadians all across the country running for this party, I think that scared the establishment. And I think then they implemented their play to circumvent this. And what it was to prop up Pierre Poilievre with populist rhetoric. All of a sudden, Pierre is going to challenge Jean Charest for leadership of the Conservative Party. They make the whole race about conservatism versus the more liberal, progressive leanings of the party. And then afterwards, they change it from the Progressive Conservative Federal Party to the Conservative Federal Party. So now, like, Pierre's with us, right? He's got some fresh, feckless slogans. So, I mean, that's where we're at. Tom Thomas, PPC, LOL, I'm out. Good for you, Tom Thomas. You're perpetuating exactly the rhetoric they want you to. That leads me to it, as a matter of fact. That's what they did. They essentially, the PSYOP came. Who comes out of nowhere? All of these artificially propped up shill accounts. You get your pleb trucker and those type of likes, and that's what it is. It's the same thing. And anyone who's looked into Canadian politics, it's always the same logic fallacy, right? We're consistently voting for the lesser of two evils, and we're consistently losing freedoms. The degeneration of Canada has just been at a fever pitch lately. But sure, I know, I hear that. And you know what, man, honestly, I support PPC. But I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. Fuck PPC. You vote for who you want, Tom Thomas. But if you continue to support the Uniparty, you're a goddamn fool. And I mean that. I sincerely do. So you can LOL all you'd like, sir. I think you're likely a fool. So we got close to 100 people watching presently. So if everyone could share this, it's very advantageous. I'm very much deboosted. It's funny, everyone's seemingly deboosted presently. Now, I've been experiencing issues with account suppression since March, since the election with Carney. But like I said, I mentioned earlier, Elon is now mentioning that there is a bug that's been located and there's some kind of fix coming. But what I've noticed, and this indicates to me, this almost, for me, it confirms my suspicions that a lot of these shill CPC supporters on X are being propped up synthetically, is despite everyone else, like I'm talking accounts with hundreds of thousands of people being deboosted, all of these shill accounts, this Jingle High character, he's apparently like a young Zoomer conservative supporter. And he's always posting like hyper masculine images, AI images of Pierre, and just your typical cheerleader for CPC. But like, he doesn't got a big following. He's got like 15, 16,000 people. And every one of his posts are like just getting mad traction. So that indicates to me, and considering this climate of like everyone being deboosted, that this is occurring artificially. I truly believe that, and I could see it. I see it with all these people. It seems like they're being inflated, they're being supported. And at the same time, anyone who has an alternative view, the true independent voices on social media are just being deboosted, seemingly systematically. But so how does this movie end, JP? Feels like we're in a choose your adventure scenario. It certainly seems like it's written. So I mean, after Pierre's propped up and they have the big election, Pierre's district gets redistricted, and there's a large liberal area at it, and he loses his own riding. And he doesn't have anything to say about it. It's like I frequently say, man, what confirms my suspicion regarding Pierre Poilievre more so than any other indication is his silence. His just silence on everything. Like, why doesn't he call it out? Like, Carney's a globalist banker. He's implementing an agenda. This is like treasonous. I'll tell you why, because he's in on it, clearly. So after the redistricting, he loses his riding. Where does Pierre have to go to get a seat? Well, conveniently, in the one province that has a robust independence movement that's garnering more momentum, Alberta. There's a gentleman in rural Alberta that gives up his seat, and Pierre gets to have a runoff election. So then we get to see Pierre, and he's dressed up with his cowboy hat on. I've seen a few ones where he's on horses. It's just utterly synthetic. Like it's so funny. It's almost insulting at this point, but it's just very performative. He's got big old redneck style belt buckles on and cowboy hats. Pierre's a cowboy now. I called him Brokeback Poilievre for this moment, which I thought was funny, but hey. So then, of course, he gets back in. And now what he does is he sloppily regurgitates feckless and sloganeering rhetoric, and he serves essentially as a pressure release valve. So when like low resolution Canadians that don't follow this as close as many others do, they look to Pierre Poilievre and he's saying some of the right things. And they're like, just okay, well, that's the opposition. And he kind of he's legitimizing Carney. His feckless and veined opposition is providing the electorate with the illusion to the extent where Carney can continue to implement the agenda. I mean, Bill C8 and C9 are just the end of Canada as we've known it. We've turned into a totalitarian system thereafter. That's as simple as that. So anything else, the fact that the leader of the opposition is not utilizing his podium, which is the second biggest platform in Canada, to lay out the harms and the potential harms of this globalist legislation. That, for me, it tells me everything I need to know. It's actually insulting that he's not. And I understand Leslyn Lewis. She's the one they roll out to feign opposition for some of the more controversial things. But I mean, we're watching a performance. So then a lot of people are actually talking about C8 and C9, I noticed. And what happens is all of a sudden this big Penn and Teller style misdirection. What is it? It's Katy Perry and Justin Trudeau are spotted on a love boat. Like, come on, man. Who gives a fuck? But this brings Trudeau back into the forefront, and all of these big shill accounts are discussing Trudeau. The misdirection is successful. Everyone's discussing it. Just as Pierre Poilievre decides to do his podcast tour, right? He's going to be more organic, right? He knows that now it's let's talk to the independent media. So he goes on Northern Perspective. It's a husband and wife duo, and I've been pretty harsh on them just because I truly feel that your job as a voice of the electorate, an independent voice of the electorate, is to scrutinize public servants. And there's a large contingent of the electorate presently that is very concerned regarding Pierre Poilievre's silence on these globalist legislation, on this Bill C8 and C9. So the fact that they gave him a cakewalk and wanted to, let him talk about his character and him as a man, that's just silly to me. It just shows a level of non-professionalism and a lack of integrity. But then Pierre does this, and on this show, on this podcast, Naive Perspectives, he says he mentions Trudeau and that Trudeau should have been arrested for some of these scandals. And this sets it off. Now that's the psyop. So now everyone's discussing Trudeau. And it's like I've mentioned before, listen, guys, if you think someone like Justin Trudeau gets anywhere near the levers of power, you're just naive. Your framing is entirely inadequate to comprehend anything presently. Justin Trudeau was the front man. It's almost like a lead singer for a band that doesn't write any of the music. He's just put out front to sing the songs. And now he's the fall guy, right? But people have a visceral hatred for Justin Trudeau, and I understand why. And I'm not trying to trivialize what he's done, which, and if it's true, it's treasonous. But essentially, they're misdirecting you to talk about Justin Trudeau and should or should he not be prosecuted, while the exact same penetrated cabinet is implementing the agenda. It's like, I say classic Penn and Teller style misdirection. They have the electorate discussing superfluous things up here, just totally inconsequential culture war bullshit, while there's real stuff going on down here. And that's where we are, man. And the whole corrupt enterprise continues to perpetuate itself. So I'm going to ask everyone again, if you could please repost the stream. We're up to about 1:30 presently. Generally at this point, 20 minutes in, I'd have like 250 people. So clearly this algorithm is just really tweaked. So if an election happens and Pierre gets in, do you think CB9 will be put in by the cons? Is that a possible plan? C8 and C9. I don't necessarily think that that's going to happen. I didn't get to that point. What I would say was similar. I do a podcast on Tuesdays with my friends Chris Erickson and Payman Askari, and Chris Erickson had a very intriguing theory. He says, just knowing, we both agree about the controlled opposition of Poilievre. So we said, like, maybe Poilievre, just after Carney trashes everything, comes in as this economic hitman, decimates our economy, passes these bills, because I believe he will be able to successfully pass these bills, unless the public really has a reaction, which is what I'm pushing for. But then I think Pierre Poilievre could potentially win a minority government, and then he's left with the mess. Carney doesn't want to be here. Like, Carney's always, if you know anything about him, he's always considered himself above the political class, knowing how true power works. Carney's referred to himself on videos, you could find them yourselves, as a globalist and an elitist. He's referred to himself as a European. He says he identifies more so with Europe than Canada. This is all, again, you could find this stuff. But do you guys think for a minute that he left his coffin in Europe and traveled to this resource/labor colony to help us? No. They made him come here. They truly did that. You'll never convince me otherwise. So I think Carney's going to bail out as soon as possible after he does whatever his objectives were. It got serious enough where they're like, yeah, we need to send in the big guy. Because Mark Carney is not just a WEF member in a central bank sitting on the Central Bank of Canada and the Central Bank of the UK, but he's also written a book called Values that is quite relevant to everything we're seeing now with the agenda. In the book, he lays out meticulously how a free market could be transitioned to what he refers to as a human values-based system. And I mean, for the uninitiated, that might sound pretty good, considering the fiat central banking system is just debt-based usury, that it's like, hey, well, human values-based sounds good, but it's the same. It's just a semantical rebranding of the same Marxian conceptual framings that have failed immensely in the past. It's very similar, but it's going to be a digital gulag, essentially. 15-minute cities, central banking, digital currency, social credit systems, carbon. I think they'll endeavor to achieve equity relative to these carbon credits. So everyone will be allocated a certain amount of carbon credits. And of course, poor people can't fathom something as luxurious as a vacation. So they'll be able to then sell that to the elite class, to the upper class, so they can not necessarily sacrifice the quality of their lives. And everything we're seeing, like that's the whole premise of carbon taxation. It's a Malthusian framing. We're going to run out of everything, so we have to, we have to tax carbon. We're changing the climate, but the premise is to get us to gradually acclimate to a lesser quality of life. That's what it is. And we are it's like a dog. You got a dog on a chain, and every single day you remove one of the links of the chain, and it happens so gradually that he doesn't realize, that it's occurring. And that's or the frog being slow boiled in a pot of water. It's a very similar analogy, and that's what's happening in Canada. And we're all acclimating to our subjugation, and it's continuously getting worse. But I believe we'll likely see Pierre Poilievre as prime minister. I wish it had happened initially so people could realize like this guy's implementing the same agenda 100%, and he will continue to. I believe Pierre Poilievre showed his entire hand during the trade negotiations. I could see desperate people continuing to make mistakes or make excuses for him. Because I mean, the dude, beyond just regurgitations of scripted rhetoric, he dressed up to pander to various immigrant communities while weaponized mass migration was decimating our economy and balkanizing our electorate. I mean, the guy was he got mad at his ministers for meeting with Christine Anderson when they came over. Like you could see that Pierre is on the other side of this whole thing. Then the adversarial thing with Trump. I mean, why wouldn't Pierre just have been like, yeah, Carney's going the wrong way. We should just make a deal with Trump. Because everything Trump said, like they have all the cards. Of course they do. I mean, the reason that we do all of our trade with the largest market is relative to proximity. Like you can't replace America and what they are with Europe or China or anywhere in Asia. There's just too much of a distance. It would be extravagant, the expenditure to facilitate that. But he didn't. He essentially stood with the same stance that Carney had. Put your elbows up. Let's, these. It is funny with the liberal end of it, because after like a decade of post-national rhetoric, after a decade of kind of deeming anyone who was patriotic and had a Canadian flag as right-wing extremists for having a Canadian flag, now the same people that did that now want you to dance for them. They want you to get out and show your national pride because their whole corrupt enterprise is being threatened. The minute Trump started speaking and mentioning the 51st state, they conveniently then flipped on a dime. Now they're super nationalistic. What a joke, man. Got Gary Halleck. Wasn't somebody's grandfather chased out of Canada for creating a social credit party? Well, I'm unfamiliar with that. But yeah, this is a different time slot than I usually do. So I was hoping it might mean that I would get a bit more viewers than I generally do, but it did not. I'm very much deboosted. So if you guys could share it, it's helpful. I get most of my views on these things after the live show. But there's not a lot of questions here. So I'm going to rant a bit more and then we'll call it an early one tonight. But yeah, it's pretty wild to watch everything. Every day it's worse. What my instincts tell me, watching the Doug Ford fiasco and watching the tariff increase, I think they obviously knew if they're poking the bear that they would get a response, and I think they wanted the response. Sometimes your enemy's reaction is your true action, and that's what I believe with this ad. I really do. And I think they then want to use this like they have been efficaciously the whole time. The threat of Trump, not just to get power, but to then rationalize these massive changes he's doing. These big, what he calls national building projects and stuff. Like everything he's doing is predicated on on a reimagining of the global market, and America's the bad guy. And you could see all the Commonwealth countries, the EU countries. It's like honestly, like they're trying to wait out Trump's term, and then they'll just continue implementing the agenda. Could you imagine? And I say this because a lot of my followers don't necessarily have faith in Trump anymore. I never did. I never had entirely faith in anyone, but I really hoped Trump was what he was portrayed as, someone that was looking to get back to a populist type of a situation. So MS8719. Was it Musk's maternal grandfather or grandmother that owned emerald mines in Africa? I've heard a lot of interesting things about Elon Musk's lineage. I heard his grandfather was a big technocrat, believed in a big technocratic society, essentially. And you could check all this stuff out. I didn't vet any of it, so it's conjecture on my behalf. But I heard a lot of interesting tidbits regarding that. But I must say, experiencing the last couple of weeks on X, I do hope whatever he's doing with it is going to fix the problems, because everyone's deboosted. It's to the point now where it's almost not worthwhile to put a lot of effort into your content for X, because you're that deboosted. And again, it's widespread, like these last couple of weeks specifically, and that's why Elon has spoken to it. Even accounts with millions of followers are coming out and complaining. So hopefully that changes something. I certainly won't hold my breath, because I was deboosted since March. At the peak of my growth, I'm going up like this, and I hit about 25,000 followers, and everything's going great. And boom, I fall off a cliff, and my analytics flatline. And it's not organic. You could see, obviously. And if you ask premium support, you get a chatbot that said the same thing Elon was saying a couple of weeks ago. Oh, it's just relative to the quality of your content. Focus on your content. You can't even talk to a real person. It's like the analytics indicate very clearly that I'm being suppressed in some regard. Why can't my followers see my content? And you just get a standard chatbot response. So I won't hold my breath for that. I'll continue despite it. I have been. So, but anyway, tomorrow we have the Philosopher, the Stoic, and the Teddy Bear. That's what my friends Chris Erickson and Payman Ascari. And we do that at 3 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday. This is just like my show. It's live, it's unscripted, it's interactive. So if you want to come out and bring your questions, it's always a good time, I promise. And then tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm doing a space with TR6 Amigo and Bob the Fact Checker. So that should be interesting. I don't do spaces frequently, but I'm looking forward to this one. I've interacted with these gentlemen a lot on X, but I have yet to have a conversation with them. So that should be interesting. And that's tomorrow. And again, I will ask everyone, even though it's ending now, if you could share this, repost this stream. It's very advantageous for me. It's the only thing that gets anyone seeing it. And I do get a lot of my views after the live show, so it does help immensely. And I want to thank everyone for coming out and watching. My name's JP Berg, and this was Dumb the Wiser. Thanks, guys. Cheers.